Russia on the brink of implosion as Putin's inevitable collapse looms. January 18, 2026. Vladimir Putin's Russia resembles a Frankenstein's monster destined to collapse under the weight of its own internal contradictions, according to exiled Russian dissident Nastya Rodionova. Rodionova, a former political journalist and acclaimed poet, has lived in exile in France with her family since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. She said she fled after her children were subjected to state truth lessons at school, where they were taught Russia was saving Ukrainians from Nazism. I realized that if I stayed in Russia, I would not be able to remain silent, and eventually I would end up in prison, she said. Starting a new life, even at the cost of losing almost everything, was the more honest choice. Rodionova closely observed the mass protests that followed Putin's announcement in 2011 that he would return for a third presidential term. However, she became disillusioned by what she described as the middle class's political failure when demonstrations quickly collapsed under Kremlin pressure. Even in a relatively softer authoritarian climate, educated urbanites folded under minimal repression as the regime hardened into a dictatorship, she said. Hope briefly resurfaced with youth-led protests inspired by Alexei Navalny's anti-corruption movement, but these too faded as the government introduced harsher repressive laws. Despite repeated failures of opposition movements, Rodionova remains convinced Putin's system will ultimately crumble. Putin's Russia is like Frankenstein's monster, a grotesque organism made from dead parts and animated by mad will, she said. You can't re-educate it or dress it up in European values. The only real option is to dismantle it. She argues that Russia's downfall will come not from corruption, censorship, or war, but from deep regional inequality. Vast differences between Moscow and distant regions such as Siberia, Chechnya, Kalmykia, and Chukotka have created parallel worlds ruled from the center and forced into artificial uniformity. Each region has its own identity and pride, she said. That is where I see potential. Russia is home to more than 190 ethnic groups and is divided into 89 regions, including 21 ethnic republics such as Tatarstan and Chechnya. Many regions are now under growing financial strain as resources are diverted to fund the war in Ukraine. Reports indicate that at least 56 regions are facing severe budget deficits, leaving little funding for essential services like healthcare and education, pressures Rodionova believes could accelerate the system's eventual collapse. By the Daily Express, story by John Varga, Miriam Tua, January 18, 2026.